Over the course of the past day, Ukraine's armed forces have struck 17 Russian artillery units, an air defense system, and 3 command posts. Source: General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Facebook. Information is of 1800 on the 20th of June. Details: over the course of the day, Ukrainian aircraft carried out 8 airstrikes on areas where Russian military personnel were concentrated in 2 Russian anti-aircraft missile systems. Ukraine's defense forces also destroyed 3 Russian reconnaissance drones. Units of Ukraine's rocket forces and artillery struck 3 Russian command posts, 1 cluster of Russian military personnel and equipment, 3 electronic warfare systems, 17 field artillery units, 1 anti-aircraft missile system, and 1 other critical military target. According to the most up-to-date information, Russian occupation forces deployed 35 Iranian-made Shahed drones, 7 S-300 guided anti-aircraft missiles, and 1 surface-to-surface Iskander-M cruise missile in an attack on Ukraine, in particular on civilian infrastructure facilities in Zaporizhia. Air defense forces and assets of Ukraine's Air Force, jointly with air defense units in other arms of Ukraine's defense forces, shot down and destroyed 32 Shahed attack drones. Russian forces also conducted more than 72 airstrikes and deployed multiple launch rocket systems (MLRS) in further 36 attacks on positions of Ukrainian troops and on civilian settlements. There are civilian casualties. Russia continues to focus its main efforts on the Lyman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Marinka fronts. A total of 35 combat engagements occurred between Russian and Ukrainian forces over the course of the day. The operational situation on the Volyn and Polishcha fronts remains much the same as before. On the Severshchina and Slobozhenshchina fronts, Russia continues to maintain its forces in areas near the Russian-Ukrainian border. Over the course of today, Russian forces conducted airstrikes on Yenjulivka and Leonivka, Chernihiv Oblast, and deployed mortars and artillery to fire on Holohanivka and Karpovichy, Chernihiv Oblast, Kindrativka, Brusky, Basivka, Lochnia, Unikivka, Bakhmut, Stepny, Sumy Oblast, and Ivashki, Roshkovichy, Hariv Kazakok, Udi, Marino, Vysoka Yarua, Morokovets, Ternova, Hatish, Vovchansk, Budarki, Ustynivka, Chuvunivka, Ambarn and Hurahorivka, Kharkiv Oblast. On the Kupiansk front, Fyholivka, Vorokna, Zapadna, Kyslivka and Berestov, Kharkiv Oblast came under Russian fire. On the Lyman front, Russian forces conducted offensive operations near Kremena-Yampolivka. Stelmakivka, Nevsky and Bilohorivka, Luhansk Oblast, and Torsky, Serebryanka, Verkhnekamiansk, Spern and Rozdolivka, Donetsk Oblast came under Russian fire. On the Bakhmut front, Russian forces made unsuccessful attempts to advance on Orikovo-Vasilivka, Donetsk Oblast. Vashukivka, Orikovo-Vasilivka, Bodanivka, Kalinivka, Chasev Yar, Ivanovsky, Ozaryanivka, Bila Hora, Koschantinivka, Druzhba and Pivnikny, Donetsk Oblast came under Russian fire. On the Avdiivka front, Russian forces conducted airstrikes in the vicinity of Avdiivka and Severn and conducted unsuccessful offensive operations in the vicinity of Avdiivka. They also shelled Avdiivka, Pervomaisk and Nevelsky, Donetsk Oblast. On the Marinka front, Russian forces conducted an airstrike near Marinka and shelled Krasnohorivka, Heorhivka, Marinka and Pobeda, Donetsk Oblast. On the Shakhtarsk front, Russian forces conducted offensive operations in the vicinity of Novomikhailivka, but were unsuccessful. They also shelled Hostre, Paraskoviivka and Novomikhailivka, Donetsk Oblast. Russian forces are on the defensive on the Zaporizhia and Kherson fronts. They conducted airstrikes in the vicinity of Storozhev, Prekostivka, Zolotonaiva, Blahodatna and Makarivka, Donetsk Oblast, and the city of Zaporizhia, Zaporizhia Oblast. Russian troops also shelled Blahodatna, Neskuchny, Makarivka, Storozhev, Vermivka, Zelin Pol, Novopil, Donetsk Oblast, Novodorivka, Lavadna, Chervon, Huliaipol, Zaliznikny, Charivny, Novoandrivka, Stepov, Piaty Kotki, Lobkov, Kamiansk, Zaporizhia Oblast, Zolota Balka, Mikhailivka, Novoalexandrivka, Dudchiny, Kachkarivka, Shliakov, Kozatsky, Mykolaievka, Burhunka, Ivanivka, Sadov, Pridniprovsky, Nadnepryansk, Molodizhny, Zymivnik, Bilozerka, Romashko, Kherson, Dniprovsky, Kizimysk, Kherson Oblast, Nikopol, Dnepropetrovsk Oblast, and Oshakov Mykolaiv Oblast. Russian occupation forces have set up additional checkpoints and filtration points on the temporarily occupied territories of Zaporizhia Oblast. Civilians who want to leave Russian-occupied territories in Ukraine's south are forced to undergo the process of filtration at checkpoints in Manhush and Novoazovsk in Donetsk Oblast. During filtration, people undergo rigorous document checks, their personal possessions are inspected, and their fingerprints are taken. The General Staff of Ukraine's Armed Forces reported on June 20 that Russia has lost 221,460 troops in Ukraine since the beginning of its full-scale invasion, with an estimated 1,010 casualties on June 19. Ukraine's armed forces are advancing and consolidating on two fronts, General Staff. The Ukrainian Defense Forces continue to advance on the Melitopol and Berdyansk fronts, and they are strengthening their positions in new locations. No positions have been lost where the Ukrainian Armed Forces are defending. Source: General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Facebook. Information is of 6 o'clock on the 20th of June. Quote from Andriy Kovalev, spokesman for the General Staff of Ukraine's Armed Forces. Offensive actions continue on the Melitopol and Berdyansk fronts, namely in the areas of Novodarivka, Pryum, Makarivka, Rivnopil, and Novodanilivka, Robotyne. The Ukrainian military had partial success during the past day. They are entrenching themselves in the achieved positions. The enemy concentrated its main efforts on defending and preventing the advance of our troops, using reserves and trying to restore the lost ground. Details: the General Staff noted that the Russians continue to focus their main efforts on the Lyman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka, and Marinka fronts. Heavy fighting continues there, and there were 45 combat clashes over the past day. The General Staff has reported that the Russian occupation forces are engaging in the looting of Ukrainian civilians in the temporarily occupied territory of Ukraine, which suffered flooding due to the deliberate destruction of the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant by Russian forces. In particular, at the checkpoints leading to Oleshki, the invaders are confiscating humanitarian aid meant for the affected population. Over the past day, the aviation of the Defense Forces carried out 15 strikes on areas where Russian personnel were concentrated. During the day, units of rockets, troops and artillery struck 3 control points, 10 clusters of personnel and military equipment, 2 ammunition storage depots, 1 fuel and lubricant depot, 15 artillery units in a firing position, 3 air defense facilities, and 2 more targets used by the Russians. In total, Ukrainian soldiers killed more than 1,010 Russian invaders and destroyed 8 tanks, 15 armored combat vehicles, 23 artillery systems, 4 anti-aircraft guns, 2 air defense systems, 1 helicopter, 10 operational tactical UAVs, 3 cruise missiles, 32 vehicles and 5 units of special equipment.